Okay, well, good evening, good afternoon, good morning, whenever you're listening to the videos, watching the videos. We're on to 6.4c. Today's topic is still polynomials we're factoring. That's going to be the whole theme of the chapter. We're doing the AC method here. So we're doing the AC method. We've done the AC method kind of description of in 6.4a. 6.4b was a little more examples, and we're going to do, again, probably another example today. And again, we'll be given an ax squared plus bx plus c, a trinomial like this. Not necessarily in that format, but we'll be given something like that, and we'll have to start factoring. So let's go over to our smart presentation. So here's our AC method, and here is an example. Here are the steps that we need to do. Step number one is always going to be important. We've got to write things in descending order, factor out a greatest common factor, and factor out a -1 if we want. I put a star up here, and you know what? I'm going to put another star here just to say this is probably something you'll need to remember for the AC method. If you're going to remember the AC method, if you're going to want to remember one method, probably the AC method is going to always work. It's going to be sometimes tedious, and maybe later on we'll do a comparison, maybe compare and contrast between trial and error and the AC method. But right now we're just going to learn the AC method. So write things in descending order, factor out a greatest common factor, factor out a -1 if a is negative, and that makes our life easy. After that, we multiply a and c to get AC, and then we list the factor pairs of AC, including negative numbers if needed. And then we find the factor pairs from this list up here that add up to our B term. B could be positive, B could be negative, so we've got to pay attention to negative signs. We've got to pay attention to the product pairs that add up to B, and that's going to be important. That's going to allow us then to rewrite that middle term in step number 5, rewrite the middle term in terms of that factor pair that multiplied together to give us AC and added up to B. And after we rewrite, then we factor by grouping, and we come up with something like this. And then to double check, step number 7 is using the FOIL method to go to use the first terms outside, inside, and last, and multiplying things out. Again, this is on page 433, but I modified it just a little bit here. So let's move on and say we've done some of this work, we've done that work. Wow, what a lot of work. So let's take something like this. And you can see that we're almost close to the end because we're kind of listing the homework here. But let's take something like this. And you know what? I will assign, I'll go through this one as another example. I'll go through that one. So we'll be given that one, but I'm going to assign this one as homework. And if you wanted to, you could probably just pause the video right now and say, you know what, I think I can do this. So I'm going to walk through this one on my own and then fast forward through the video, which you're allowed to do. Especially on the example ones, like this one here, this section 6.4c, we're going through an example. So if you want to pause the video right now, in fact I recommend it, pause the video right now and go through it, see if you can get the answer that I got, and if you've got it, then you're home free. Alright, so pause the video. Alright, now that we come back from the pause, let's go through what we've got. We've got 9y cubed minus 30y squared plus 24y. Well, it looks like a trinomial. And let's see, number one, I guess we're going to make our life easy. Is it in descending order? Y to the third, y squared, y to the first. Looks good, so it's in descending order. We need to factor out a greatest common factor. So let's see, is there a greatest common factor in 9y cubed and 30y and 24y? There sure is, because we can factor out a 3 and a y, because every term has a y, every term has a 3 also. So let's take a look at factoring out that 3y, what that looks like. So if we factor out a greatest common factor of 3y, 9y cubed divided by 3y gives me 3y squared, and we're looking towards now with a leading term like that, it looks like something that we can factor. Negative 30y squared divided by 3y gives us negative 10y. Plus 24y divided by 3y is plus 8, and that's it. So there's our factorization. Now, the last thing is, do we need to factor out a -1 from here? Is a negative? If a is negative, then we need to factor something out, but we don't. So right now, this polynomial, this one underlined, is a trinomial that we need to start factoring using the AC method. So I'm going to go through kind of a couple of different steps that you might not necessarily need to do. But for right now, I'm going to say, oh, a is equal to 3. You might not necessarily have to write it down, but if it helps you, a is equal to 3, b equals negative 10, c equals 8. All right, so then if we do that, then we have our AC equals, and again, you might not have to write all this down. You might be able to say AC equals this, but for all intents and purposes, I'm going to say 3 times 8, just for clarity's sake. 3 is our A, C is 8. 3 times 8 equals 24. And now we need to find factor pairs. So we've done our AC. And if we go through our steps, I guess, hang on one second. Go through our steps. Here's our steps. We've got step number 2 now. We've multiplied A and C to get AC. Now 3 is list the factor pairs, and 4 we'll have to keep in mind as well. From those factor pairs, which one of those adds up to B? So let's go down to the page where we're working on and say, let's list factor pairs. And keep in mind, we're looking for something that adds up to B equals negative 10. Something might jump out at me as saying, you know what, we could list 1 and 24 and 2 and etc. But I might say, you know what, 4 and 6 add up to 10. And I've got to keep in mind I've got to add up to negative 10 because that's what I'm looking for. My B is negative 10, so I've got to put a negative sign here and a negative sign here. Because that would be true then, that A from AC equals 24, factor pair of negative 4 and negative 6 multiplies together to give me positive 24 and adds up to negative 10. So we're okay with this. That's our answer. We could have gone through all the list of 1 and 24, 2 and 12, etc. until we got to 4 and 6. And then if we're looking at this, we should have said we need to find factor pairs that are negative. Negative and negative, because they add up to a negative number, and a negative times a negative would be a positive. So I would probably put negative signs on all these and just start with that negative sign in front of all of them. But we did find our factor pair, so we can rewrite that negative 10y as negative 4y minus 6y. And then what's left over, we'll rewrite in terms of in the red. Here's 3y squared, and here's plus 8. And I haven't written something, and you might notice it. If you notice it, good for you. If not, I'll bring it up in just a second. All right, so now we factor by grouping. So we factor these two together by grouping. Sorry, I kind of wrote over that y. We factor these two together as well. And now we factor what the greatest common factor between this term and that term in the green. And then in the blue, we figure out what's the common factor between this and this. My steps are, well, let's see, 3y squared and negative 4y. I'm going to factor out in green a y. Hang on a second. I don't know why that's not green. I don't know why that's not green either. Let's see if that's green. All right. Let's get an eraser. Sorry. Let me erase this, make it clearer. F9. All right, so I did some touch up there. Sorry, and I'm now recording. So 3y squared minus 4y, the greatest common factor is y. And what comes out then, what is left in our factorization here, 3y squared divided by y is 3y minus 4. In our blue, what do we have left there? We've got, hopefully this is blue, I'm going to factor out a negative 2. Because 2 is common between these two, but I'm going to try and factor out a negative 2. Because that will make my leading term inside the parentheses positive, which is what we're trying to match over here. So let's see if that makes a difference. Negative 6y divided by negative 2 is 3y, and sure enough that matches over there. Plus 8 divided by negative 2 is negative 4, and that matches. So when you're factoring by grouping, this is again, I guess, step 5. When we're factoring by grouping, we look for a common factor like here and here, or sorry, a common factor in each of the blue term and the green term to factor out. And we did find one by factoring out from the blue term negative 2. Alright, so now we factor out a greatest common factor between this term and that term. What is the greatest common factor? 3y minus 4. And then we take a look at this green term, y times 3y minus 4 divided by 3y minus 4 as a greatest common factor leaves us just y in the green, and minus 2 times 3y minus 4 divided by 3y minus 4 as a greatest common factor leaves us just minus 2. So we're assuming that that's our factorization of this underlined red trinomial. And in order to confirm, we can FOIL. Let's FOIL 3y times y gives us 3y squared. Outside terms is minus 6y. Inside terms is minus 4y. Last term plus 8. And now we combine like terms. We got 3y squared minus 10y plus 8. And is that the same as what we started here? 3y squared minus 10y plus 8. So from this factorization, underlined in red, this is a correct factorization. But again, this is not the end, because we need to remember what were we asked to do. We were asked to factor this entire rectangle of trinomials. So when I mentioned here that I forgot to write something down, I forgot to write this 3y, and that 3y is important because it's a part of this entire trinomial. So we need to write the 3y as a factor here, and we need to write the 3y as a factor here, and the 3y as a factor here. And that would be this entire thing in circle would be my entire factorization of this entire red rectangle. Alright, so that said, there's our factorization. Hopefully you got the answer there. We did our double check and it should work. So your homework for this 6.4c is to do this one here. Let's see, step number 1 is going to be important to make your life easy. Factor out a greatest common factor, factor out a put them in descending order, and I guess assume, maybe I'll give you this hint. Take this x as our variable and treat everything else as kind of as a non-variable, if you know what I mean. So it'd be like 18x squared plus 21x plus 15y squared x to the 0 power. And treat that as your polynomial and see what you can do with that one. So greatest common factor, descending order, -1, factor out a -1, and then after you get that, you should be able to follow the steps here. All right, questions, bring them to class. I'll look forward to your your homework notes and your this homework question in my Dropbox. See you soon.